What if everything you believed about God was actually keeping you stuck? In today's episode, we're unpacking the spiritual rewiring that happens after divorce and why questioning your faith may be the holiest thing you ever do. Stick around because this could change your entire view of healing. Joining me today are, again, they were with me in episode 2, and here we are again. It's my friends and fellow coaches, Diana Swillinger, Stacey Wynn, and Marie Griffith. And today we're going to be talking about deepening your faith and spiritual practice after divorce. So before we get into our discussion, I'd like it if you ladies could once again kind of briefly introduce yourselves, tell us about the work you do with Christian women in your private practices, as well as your role in the Flying Free and Flying Higher community space. Diana, we'll start with you this time.
Sounds great. I'm Diana Swillinger. I'm also the host of the Renew Your Mind podcast. I was first a member in Flying Free and Flying Higher Kaleidoscope, and now I get to coach and serve other women in there, which is wonderful. And I also do one-on-one group coaching, and I have a life coach certification program for those who, some people want to become coaches and some just want to go really deep in their own personal development, and nothing like looking behind the curtain and seeing how the pudding's made to really renew your mind. So, and I love showing up on this podcast and celebrating strong divorced Christian women.
Yes. Yeah. Boom. Okay, Marie, what about you? Who are you?
Yes, I'm Marie Griffith. I have my master's in Christian spiritual formation and leadership. I'm a trained spiritual director. I'm an ordained chaplain. I'm also an accounting professional, so I have a heart for the corporate world. In helping women there, but I also have been part of the Kaleidoscope for about 5 years and enjoyed teaching courses and offering my thoughts on this panel because, like Diana said, I love to help women in this space feel less alone and to know how strong they are.
I love that. Stacey.
It's Stacey Wynn. I have my Master of Divinity, and I am a professionally certified coach. I have a long tenured corporate career and ministry leadership behind me. And during the time I went through a divorce and met you, which was back in, 2016, I started to also go through a faith shift. And that began my journey into theology. And I haven't stopped. I'm in what's called the deconstruction space, which can be a scary word. But for me, it just means spiritual formation. And it's a space that I've led in since 2019. And it's an area that in my private practice, I coach very frequently. I've written a workbook that's out on Amazon called Deconstruction, Your Journey in Faith. And people can find out more about me on clarityunleashed.com.
Yeah, the more I get into this, the more that word deconstruction, it can feel scary when you're not familiar with it and you don't know what the results are of it. The beautiful, incredible results are. Now I think of it as just a beautiful word and a necessary thing, really, for all of us. Okay, so when did you first realize that your view of God was changing? How did it feel to start questioning beliefs that maybe you grew up with, or maybe that you had maybe some of you actually intentionally chose your beliefs as an adult? I don't know, but how did it feel to start questioning those once, beliefs that you once thought were untouchable? Like, these are facts. I know these are facts. And now all of a sudden it's like fruit basket upset and you're looking at them going, I don't know if this is real anymore.
Yeah, for me, it was a little bit different. So I experienced kind of being pushed out of the spaces where I had found home and my church and ministry world in many ways, because my view of God, my view of my faith was starting to differ very much from traditional evangelicalism. And I knew that what I was going through was a deepening of my faith, but I felt very isolated because of that. But I had this sense of, you're not going to take this from me. And I dug in really deep to my own spiritual journey and took courses. I ultimately went into seminary and started carving out this deconstruction journey for myself, and then quickly found that I wasn't the only one. And that became the start of just a really beautiful community. So I did, if you want to say I lost the earlier community, then so be it. But I think that I didn't lose it, but I did outgrow it. And what I'm growing into is just a beautiful place that I'm so grateful that I found.
Yeah. Yeah. What about you, Marie?
Yeah, my family and I left a church that we'd been part of for about 9 years, and we had formed great relationships. And one of the things that they like to say there at the church was, "We're your family of choice." That they said that a lot. Well, once we left the church, and we left it the way that people who left were asked to leave, we did it right, you know. But after we left, those people, our family of choice, began to separate themselves from us in painful ways. And this led me to ask more questions than I'd already been asking. I mean, part of the reason we left the church is because we were really asking ourselves some hard questions. And there was just not space to do that in the church at all. So I began after this, after the people were separating themselves from us, I allowed myself to ask the questions, speak my doubts, even feel the anger. And it was very disorienting, though, because, you're not supposed to be angry and feel angry, and you're not supposed to question. And it was really, that's the only word that I can describe it. It just felt like everything had been pulled out from under me. And I actually had this thought, oh my gosh, this is the slippery slope that they always talked about. If you allow yourself to go there, it's the slippery slope. Well, it ended up being this slippery slope into freedom and more love than I've ever known. So
Wow.
if this is what the slippery slope is, come on, ladies. Take the slippery slope. I'm telling you, I have never, I've known such love like never before. So.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Can I just say yes, yes, yes?
Yeah.
Stacey had heart emojis going on her screen. We're like, let's take this slippery slope. This is the best. It's like the best slide. You're terrified to get on in the park, but once you get on, you're like, this was the best.
Yeah, yeah. That is awesome.
My short story is when I decided I needed to get divorced, it's like I pulled a thread on my woven fabric of my faith and religion. And once I pulled that thread to decide that I could get divorced, it just kept unraveling. So the faith system I had woven all my life unraveled. I didn't realize it just kept unraveling and unraveling until I got to a point where I'm like, I'm not sure what's left anymore. So that's been very interesting for me. It's not like I purposely deconstructed it. I got divorced and unknowingly pulled the thread, and it all started unraveling.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And my quick story is that I just got excommunicated. So I got kicked out. But when I got kicked out, it's like, if you think of a city, I got kicked out to the outside walls of the city, but then I found out, wow, there's a lot of people out here and they're amazing and they love Jesus. And I do want to say this though, as I'm looking at all of you on the screen and realizing we're representing people who, deconstructed, but we really wanted to maintain our faith. And we wanted to kind of figure out what parts we were going to keep and what parts we weren't going to keep, but we wanted to maintain our faith. There are people who, and no judgment, and maybe I should have tried to find someone like that to represent that group of people. But there are people who have deconstructed to the point where they don't have that type of faith anymore. They're not sure what they believe, or the only thing they're sure that they believe is that they just don't believe in anything that has to do with God or Jesus Christ or whatever Christianity holds, or any kind of faith. Or maybe some of them have switched faiths to a different faith. But so there's a wide spectrum and gamut of like what this means, but we're bringing to you, I think we're all, and even the Flying Higher program, the Flying Free program is always going to come from a faith-based, faith-saturated perspective. And so we are all kind of representatives of that perspective. And that's what you're hearing today. And if that makes you uncomfortable, I totally get that. You can just click the off button or the forward button or go on to another podcast. But if you're someone who really wants to maintain your faith and you're struggling to hang on to it and you're wondering if it's even possible, I hope this episode gives you some hope for that. So why don't you guys each share what the hardest part about deconstruction was for you personally? And also we'd like to hear what the best part about it has been for you.
Yeah. For me, it was feeling isolated. I didn't know anybody that was having the same kinds of questions or experiences that I was. And it was hard to know how to communicate that and find support in that. So that feeling of isolation, that wilderness journey,
yeah,
I've just become more accustomed to that feeling. And I find that it is quite peaceful and a sign that I am on a journey. And that goes along with the best part, I think. And Diana Butler Bass has a book called Freeing Jesus that I like. My library is full of books. That's one of them. But she talks about following Jesus out of church. And that's such a freeing concept, because I think often that is the experience that we have, is that we are following Jesus out of the church, and we're just finding life in new ways and freedom in new ways.
Yeah. Yeah. I want to say something really quick too, that wilderness, you talk about the wilderness journey. I think that's a great word to use. And when I just a couple minutes ago talked about getting put outside of the walls and then meeting other people, I do want to say that there is something to be said for that walk, that internal walk, wilderness walk by yourself. I think there's healing that takes place when you realize my faith is not dependent on other people and whether or not they're coming with me or agreeing with me or anything. My faith is very personal between me and the Holy Spirit living inside of me. And it's incredible. It's incredible. There is a whole host of witnesses within me. And I think that's just like part of the healing journey as well. It might feel lonely, but it's also just very healing. I have a friend who recently went through a very, very difficult surgery where she now can't talk or eat or swallow or anything like that. And it might be a year of a process healing. And she feels very, very isolated and alone in her process, even though she has a lot of support. But she just told me yesterday that her relationship with God, it's like sparking right now, because God is just meeting her there in a very real sense. And for that, she feels very grateful. She feels like she is going deeper in her faith than she has ever gone before. And that's giving her a lot of peace and joy.
Yeah. Well, I can say one of the hardest parts were the loss of relationships that I talked about. But at the same time, that was a very freeing thing that happened, because I'm no longer surrounded by those, performance-based or you have to believe this way kind of transactional relationships. I have people that allow me the space to be where I am. And I want to reiterate this because you all said this, like, my relationship with Jesus is more solid and, beautiful than it's ever been. Because all of that stuff is out of the way. And I love that, Stacey. I made a note of that book. Following Jesus out of the church. Wow. That was my experience.
Yeah.
100%. Yeah.
So. Well, I didn't lose anybody in my deconstruction process. So I'm still at my church, though I pretty much only go for my life group. I don't go for the Saturday or Sunday services. But all my relationships are still fine there. And so that wasn't scary. I think the scariest part for me was kind of like what Marie was saying before, is I thought, am I misleading myself? Did I mislead myself to this place? Am I letting go of truth? And if I'm letting go of truth, then what am I making way for? And I felt a scary feeling like I was letting go of a core piece of me. I, on my own, invited Jesus into my heart, saying the prayer that I heard at church on my bed all alone when I was 4 years old. And that was me. So what am I letting go of here? And I feel like I held so tight to religion and culture and faith and God, all of it. I just was hanging on so tight. Letting go was like, if I let go, do I lose it all? So it was just terrifying. I'm like, then who am I? And what's my place in this world if I let go of everything and there is no God? Because what if this is all a sham? I mean, I went all to the very end. When my rope unraveled, there I was, letting go of absolutely everything. And I guess I didn't have a choice at that point because I landed there, and I knew letting go would ultimately free me. I just didn't know what was on the other side. And so I had to have all this courage to just, I was hanging on that final little bit of thread. I'm like, I might let go and it might be gone forever, but I have to. I don't know how to explain it. I just knew I had to. And I mentioned it in season 1 in something we were talking about, but I'm like, Jesus, I'm letting go of you, because that was the final thread. And it took about a day and a half. And then I was like, I just felt him. And I'm like, you're still here. And so I'm still rebuilding now. Like I feel like my whole tower fell apart and I don't even know what pieces to grab to start rebuilding. But what am I rebuilding? Because Jesus is still here and he's in me and the Holy Spirit's in me. So maybe there is nothing to rebuild. So I'm in a very weird philosophical space. But that was what was so terrifying. But I'm here now. I'm okay. And I have joy and I have hope and I have peace. And Jesus is alive and the rest will work itself out over time. So I'm in for this journey, whatever comes next for me.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Do any of you guys have a story about maybe a Bible verse or a Bible concept that once felt heavy and condemning, but when after you deconstructed and you re-examined it, that you suddenly realized it took on a completely different message for you?
Well, deconstruction for me just allows me to see the entire book differently. Like all of Scripture, I see with new eyes. One of the most freeing and the beginning of my journey, and one of the most freeing places is right at the very beginning, Genesis, because there was no capital A Adam, man, walking around in the garden. We're talking human is the word used there. So for me to recognize that in the beginning there was a human and that God separated that human into two, male and female, was a huge moment. And it's very simple and very, very deep at the same time. Women aren't an afterthought. We weren't made from a rib. We are literally the side of the created human. And I think that is a great place for women to start, because we have to be able to see how valued we are. And we are made in the image of God, and we're equal partners with those around us. So for me, that was the place that where my story began.
Yeah.
I want to recommend, if it's all right, the Eden podcast, not the latest episodes, but if you go to the Eden podcast and listen to even if you just listen to the first 5 episodes, the man who does that podcast, his wife did her dissertation or something on this, like one verse in chapter 2 about this. And it goes way into all the meanings of the words. And so that too blew my mind. There's other ones that blew my mind, but that really helped me feel secure in who I was as a woman. So I love that. Thanks for sharing that, Stacey.
Mine was, one of them was Woman at the Well, of course. And just seeing that with fresh eyes, that all my life I've been taught that this woman was one thing. Then I go to the Bible and read it and ask God, please show me, help me read the Bible with fresh eyes. And the Bible never says that she is what I was always taught that she was. Like they made all of these like generalizations because she was there at noon and she was in the heat of the day. She was a shameful, probably had been, an adulteress and all of these things. And that is not, the Bible never says that, and so that's just one way I encourage everyone listening to go and read that story for yourself with fresh eyes and see what it says and what it doesn't say. And you will discover there's a lot of things that the Bible never says about that woman. So that's just one example. And of course, what Diana and Stacey referred to, the story of the garden, because where I grew up, the kind of theology grew up with the woman is always under the man, and realizing, no, that's not what God intended. That was a result of the curse. Why do we want to live in the curse? We want to, this is what Jesus came to undo. Anyway, so it's just fascinating how much of it changes when you feel your belovedness. The whole Bible just opens up in a whole new way, doesn't it?
Yes. And if you're new, if you're listening and you're new to these concepts, just know what we're talking about is really just like the snowflake on the top, the tippy top of an iceberg. What we can cover today. There is, once you start getting into this and looking into it, it is a whole iceberg of amazing, eye-opening, life-changing information about the Bible. That, because honestly, the teachings, the way that I learned the Bible, it made me not want to read the Bible anymore. It made me want to throw out the Bible with the bathwater in a way. And then, but now as I learn more, I'm realizing it's the way the Bible was taught. It's the spin that works-based law keepers put on the Bible in order to maintain control over other people that actually has made the Bible harmful to people. But the Bible itself is actually very beautiful. And when you understand how to read it and what its actual intent was to begin with, it can change everything. So how do you tell the difference between deconstructing toxic teachings and simply losing your faith? Which you kind of talked about before, that some people just they say, well, I don't believe in God anymore. And what helped you keep your connection to God while also letting go of harmful religious structures?
Once you dip your toes in the deconstruction space, you will find people who talk about how terrible it is. There are whole books and podcasts that are written by so-called experts who say that anyone in the deconstruction space has lost their way and they've left God. And anyone that says that has absolutely no idea what they're talking about. And they just flat out haven't experienced this. So, I mean, I don't know how, there's just no other way to put it, because what we call deconstruction is a deepening of faith. And the fact is that you can't, if you're focused on knowing the truth and certainty, you're not in a space of faith. Faith is what happens when you're uncertain, when you have questions and doubt. That's where faith lives.
Yeah.
And so I would just say, don't be scared of the process. It is spiritual formation. It's natural. All we have to do is look at scripture to see people doubting God and asking God, where are you?
Yes.
So it is quite a scriptural place to be. And I think that really what this means is they've lost control over us.
Yes.
And that's the crux of the issue is we're not controllable. We don't conform anymore. And it's hard to look at church that way, as a place where people want to control the narrative and want to control people, women in particular. But it can be true. And there are many of us on the screen right now who've experienced it, and know hundreds of more who've experienced it. So it does exist. And for me, it's all about control. So if you're interested in deconstruction, I say the first thing to do is talk to people who've been there and who are.
Yeah, because the people who are writing these books and stuff, they've never even done their research on it. They don't know. They're not interviewing people who have gone through this process and changed and grown. I think it's the difference between authenticity and honesty and pretending, playing a game. That's what I think the difference is. And I'm sorry, but I'm going to choose the authenticity and honesty every time. Marie, did you have any thoughts here?
Yeah, well, this, because of Stacey's workbook, and Stacey, tell me the name of that again so other people will know it.
It's Deconstruction, Your Journey in Faith.
Yes. So with that workbook, I saw the story of Jacob in a whole new way. And now I realize, because also in grad school, I learned about the stages of faith. This is a normal and necessary part of any kind of growth or evolution. We experience this in every part of our lives. Why do we think we would not experience this in our faith journey? Of course, we're going to. In fact, I think something is wrong if you don't go through this phase. Like, it's just a necessary part of growing into a deeper maturity of your faith. So, I called it untangling. I didn't call mine deconstruction, but it was a wrestling out the things with God. And what a beautiful form of intimacy, right? To actually wrestle around, with God who loves us so much. And, people talk about losing their faith. I don't believe personally that we can lose our faith. I think that's just a word that people use, because God is faithful. He holds us. He is full of faith for us and with us and in us. He does not let us go. That's my stance on that.
Yeah.
So.
Okay, so for women who are afraid of getting it wrong with God, because we came out of these spaces where everything is either right or wrong. So we're afraid at first that, well, what if I get it wrong? What would you tell them? How do you know when your view of God has shifted from fear-based, which obviously, am I going to get it wrong? There's fear underneath there, right? To love-based. How do you rebuild trust in God after being told for so long that if you don't do A, B, and C, that you're going to be punished in some way, or there will be consequences, or your children will fall away from the Lord, or everyone that you know will go to hell in a handbasket? Yeah.
Let me just start, and then I know Marie's going to have a whole bunch of wisdom on this, but here's my coaching mindset on this. I would ask anyone with these questions back. First, I'd ask, what does it mean to get it wrong with God? Because I think a lot of times we think, oh, I'm getting it wrong with God, but we haven't really defined that. What does that actually mean? And then I'd ask, can we get it wrong with God? How would we know if we got it wrong with God? Would other people agree with us, or is this just in our own mind? If God is loving and gracious, is it possible to get it wrong with him? If we're coming from an open, honest, curious, and loving place, even if we have a lot of questions and we feel like there's some confusion and we have a lot to sort out, or we're trying different things, if God is loving and gracious and we're coming from that place, honesty, curiosity, and love ourselves, can we get it wrong?
Yeah.
So I would pose those questions to anyone thinking this, because I think if we think deeply about it, we're really going to have to confront the truth about who God is to us and our relationship with him.
What do we actually believe about God?
Yeah.
Oh gosh, Diana, that is beautiful. And actually, part of what I did, and I think Natalie, you said this, that you read the book of John over and over, or, because that felt like a safe place for you to restart and to engage with the Bible again. But that would be my, I would encourage people when they're ready to read the Gospels and discover who Jesus is for themselves. And this is where that question that Diana just posed, will find out. When Peter cut the guy's ear off, did he get it wrong with Jesus? And then what did Jesus do? Is there a getting it wrong? I love that you said that, Diana. That is beautiful, because I don't think there's a story of anybody in the Bible that God upholds as, one of his own, where they didn't, what we would say, get it wrong. But Jesus and God never said that. He never said, Peter, you really screwed it up this time, So even if you just read a few verses at a time, and I would also, this takes practice, ladies, but imagine the stories as if you were there. I know that spiritual direction helped me with that. And that was one of the most transformational practices that, led me into this more contemplative space and being able to read scripture in that way. Spiritual direction has been so powerful for me because it is a place where I would share my stories, a lot of time speaking them out loud for the first time. But I was met with such tender, non-judgmental kindness and love that it changed me from the inside out. And so I know Jesus in a new way, not just from reading the Gospels, but from this somebody, my spiritual director, witnessing my life and paying attention with me to how God is working in my life. They've just really loved me well in that space. And this is how I know that I have a different view of God. He is no longer the great agitated father in the sky tolerating me, because that's forever what I thought. Oh, sure, he loves me, because I got Jesus in my heart and he kind of said he would do that. So he tolerates me. No, I know that I'm his beloved and he is embracing me. He is my papa, the one I run to when I fall and scrape my knee, and even when I stomp my, feet in question and doubt and anger. He's got me. He's my papa and he loves me.
Yes, beautiful. Do you guys want to share any of your practices that have helped you to reconstruct a healthier faith? Do you have anything like maybe you journal or pray or you walk, or even things like therapy could be a spiritual practice, or seeing someone like Marie or Stacey who help people with these issues?
I'll have to, what you heard me talk about my thread unraveling, all my spiritual practices unraveled with that thread. So in a way, I let go of them. So then it's like I really am in this, it's almost this Zen place where I'm like, oh, it's just me and God. And what is a practice? But in that way, I'd say my number one practice actually is a prayer stance with God, where it's not like I'm going to sit down and pray now, but I feel like I'm in this open dialogue with him all the time. Because if it was just me and him left, and yes, I know there's greater things. There's his purpose for the world and all that kind of stuff. But I really believe if I'm hanging out with him and I'm communing with him on a regular basis, he's going to work that stuff through me. I'm a part of it already because I'm in with him. So that is my one practice. I'm trying to stay in the moment of my life at all times, and he is in the moment with me, and we're in a communion. And so that could be considered prayer or meditation or just a constant awareness. But that is my one practice that's remained. Do I still journal and read the Bible and hang out with other people and have conversations and do nature? Yes, but it's not like this. That's the one regular thing.
Yeah. Yeah. It's not like you're waking up every morning at 6 o'clock, like I used to think that you had to do. And you spend 30 minutes in reading your Bible, and then you spend 30 minutes in pacing the kitchen floor to pray.
Exactly. Yeah. A lot of that stuff's a lot more organic now, and I like it. It's freedom.
Yeah.
Yes. Well, I'll just say this real quick, and you kind of alluded to that, Diana. We have our idea of spiritual practices, but what I have found to be true is there are so much more that in our lives that are spiritual practices. I've heard of somebody saying that the act of them taking photographs has become a spiritual practice for them.
Hmm.
It does not necessarily have to be those traditional spiritual practices that we think about. And it's really helpful to think of it like, I don't know if y'all have heard of a rule of life, but, kind of like a way of approaching your faith journey with these certain disciplines or practices that help you, cultivate that kind of faithful or grateful heart, kind of like you just said, Diana. You have that stance. It's a prayerful stance. And so, yes, are there things that help us stay in that stance? Of course, but it's not a rigid thing. It's a rhythm of life. I don't like the rule of life as much as I like rhythm of life. So, that you can do that. You can create a rhythm of life and of different spiritual practices that help cultivate that kind of stance and help cultivate this way of seeing and paying attention to God in your life.
Yeah. Yeah. I think even when I'm working out sometimes, and I listen to music
Yes.
when I'm working, not even, I listen to secular music actually when I'm working out, music that helps me like do that extra rep that I don't think I can do. And I feel so connected to God when I'm doing that because I feel like I'm getting into my body that he created. And I've typically was raised to not do that because your body is, sinful. And getting into my body and feeling his presence in my body, even as I'm stretching it to do things that I don't typically do. But I do want to share one thing that's more traditional because I got away from, you guys know that I got away from reading the Bible for a long time. Other than my little reading John for over and over again for a while. But I recently discovered the Mirror Bible, and it's a new translation. And I was attracted to it because it's new. And I've read the Bible through so many times in my life and I have these interpretations of the verses are just always the same. So sometimes I'm just reading the Bible and all the old interpretations come up for me immediately. And then I just shut down because so much of it is so harmful, those interpretations, not the Bible, but actually the translations that I've read, some of them are very harmful. They will take words, like just one word in a verse, and slightly change it and completely changes the point of the verse. Or they will take, or I'll have heard a sermon on a verse that was pulled completely out of context of what the entire chapter was about. But when I read that verse, I hear the sermon. I don't read it within context of what the thing is. So the Mirror Bible has changed all of that for me. And starting at the beginning of this year, I started to do Bible studies with the people in the Flying Higher program every other Sunday. And I am not a master's of divinity. I am just your average Joe Schmo who's reading the Bible now. And I do 2 chapters a week or 2 chapters every 2 weeks. So 1 chapter a week. And all I do is in the morning, I read a few verses. And then there's so much commentary and teaching in this Bible that sometimes it takes a while just for me to read all of the really good information, like this Greek word. And it's not over your head. It's really plain as day to understand for someone like me. And it has completely rocked my world as far as what the Bible is actually about and it is, you guys, it is literally good news. When the gospel, which means good news, says that it's a gospel, it really is. It's not just pretending to be. There's no cognitive dissonance about it. It's good news, but also it's crappy news because, if you don't do it, it is amazing. So, in that way, I actually have been able to adopt more of like the traditional Christian practice of reading the Bible a little bit each day. And it's actually life-giving for me instead of traumatizing. But can any of you guys share a moment when you sensed God's presence in an unexpected way since you've been deconstructing?
I had one thought, but you mentioned something earlier that brought something else to mind. And I think as not everyone who listens to this is a mom, but if you are, then perhaps you've heard in the past that you're responsible in some way for your children's faith journey.
Yeah.
And
Yes.
and I just want to say I don't believe that to be true. We all have our own journey, but there was a day when I was already separated and my daughter was with me. She was a teenager and she came to me and said, I don't believe in God anymore. I don't think I'm a Christian anymore. And in that moment, I just felt intense peace around that.
Oh.
And I said, you know what? I think I'm right there with you, because the God that we were following in those destructive communities is not the God that I would say I follow now. So, you know what? Good for you. And I'm with you on the journey. Whatever. You continue to explore who you think God is or is not. And just let me know what you're thinking. The conversation started.
Yeah, that is so beautiful. And here's the thing, it takes the weight off of us and our children to figure it out. Because when you stop and think about it, the good news is that Jesus already did it all for all of us. Whether we believe it in this moment or not is completely irrelevant. When you're in the middle of a hurricane storm, it's hard to believe that the sun is still shining above, because it can get really dark. And yet the sun is shining. If we truly believe that Jesus Christ's death and resurrection is efficacious for all of us, then we have to be able to trust that he's got our kids. And think about why people don't believe. Some of them just haven't heard at all. Okay. Some of them have disabilities they're not able to understand. And some of them have been wounded and they don't believe because of trauma in their lives. And so God has no answers for them. I mean,
and I think we have to allow everyone to have their own agency. And if for a period of time, it's important to you to separate yourself through spiritual, not having a spiritual discipline or just not believing, then that's okay.
Exactly.
It's not, there's no pressure there.
It doesn't depend on us. It's not, God's love for us is not dependent on us and where we're at in the journey. Exactly. Anybody else want to share? Marie, did you have something you?
Yeah, I've talked about this before, but I experienced God's presence at a disco dance party, which, in my old evangelical, kind of environment, I would have felt something like that in a weird place like that, but I would have either doubted it and I certainly wouldn't have spoken about it. But I'll never forget the first disco dance party that I went to. Looking around and seeing all the diversity, and I felt God's delight as we all danced and sang Celebration by Kool and the Gang. It was absolutely beautiful. I get chills thinking about it right now because I know I felt God's delight and presence.
Yeah. I love that. I mean, that is a very spiritual song when you stop and think about it. Celebrate good times. Good times come from God.
Come on.
All right. Oh my gosh. Okay. Well, I think we're gonna wrap up. I just wanted to say, Stacey's actually taught a class inside of Flying Higher based off of her book, Deconstruction, Your Journey in Faith. And you still have your deconstruction thing on Sunday night, right?
I do, every Sunday on Zoom.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, and anyone can be part of that wants to. So we'll put a link to that for sure. There's another class that Stacey taught in Flying Higher called Faith and Time Travel. And in that class, we go back in time to meet 3 women from Scripture who teach us they have a lot to teach us about our lives now and the things that we're going through and in the middle of difficult situations. And then Marie taught a class last fall, I think it was, called Finding Your Sacred Pathway. And that's also inside of the program. And all these classes are in addition to dozens of courses that address specific issues that divorced Christian women are facing, like fear and big emotions and feelings of failure and navigating relationships with adult kids and single parenting and deprogramming from our past ways of thinking so that we can grow in courage and confidence and rebuild lives that we are that we feel capable of living in as adult women. So when you join us, all of us inside of Flying Higher, you're going to get access to all of these things, plus our community, plus live events every single week. Like the Bible study I mentioned earlier, where we're going through the Mirror Bible. Right now, we're in the book of Luke. We've got book studies and classes and discussions and group coaching. You can interact with all of us in real time in our community forum. And the promise that I make to everyone who joins is that if you come in and do the work of learning the tools and strategies and you apply them to your life, you will be a different version of yourself in 1 year. And it will happen by osmosis. Okay. I'm going to help you. These women are going to help you create those changes that took us, at least I'm speaking for myself, many years of trial and error and stumbling around a lot. And you will be able to make that same progress in a year. And what would that be worth to you? Would it be worth $590? Because that is what it costs. If you were going to join us for an entire year, it'd be $590. And if you can't pay $590 all at once, we do have a $59 a month option as well. I want to read what one member just wrote a couple weeks ago in our forum. She wrote this: "Those who have been around a long time might remember me. I used to post a lot in the forum. Some people come in and they're just consuming the courses, but they're not really posting in the forum. And that's fine. I think actually most people are doing that, but it's there if you need it. But this person wasn't really posting. She said, I've been in Flying Free and Flying Higher now for several years. I just wanted to come in here and share thanks for all this program has done for me. When I joined, I was in intense pain. My therapist told me I had one of the worst trauma bonds she had ever seen. Seriously, I felt like I was white knuckling it through the divorce. I was so accustomed to going back to him that it took everything I had to stay the course. Now, here I am flying higher than ever before. I have an amazing life. I even went back to an old career I never thought I'd be able to handle doing again. It's pretty amazing what you can accomplish when you're not being abused. My adult kids are thriving. I have my first grandbaby. I recently bought a house. I'm happier than I ever thought possible. I basically marinated myself in this program. I have listened to all the coaching calls, some many times over. I've done every single workshop and class, many of them many times over. I cannot overstate the importance of doing the work, especially if you've been abused. It takes time for this information to really click. I still listen to a coaching call or workshop almost every day. When I started this program, I was pretty hung up on the idea no one would ever love me, that my life was over. It's only been recently I realized I don't need a romantic relationship. And in fact, I kind of like not having one. I don't feel lonely because I'm walking in the truth. Because of that, I can show up with so much love for others too. Thank you to Natalie and all the coaches and all of you. I'm probably going to continue to stick around and soak in the wisdom that you all offer. So if you want to join us in this work, you can by going to joinflyinghigher.com, and you can create those same results in your own life. And I want to speak to those of you who feel like, you know what, I'm good. I don't really need to join Flying Higher. That is completely fine. I'm glad that you don't want, I'm glad that you're good. But did you know that this podcast and the Flying Free podcast, which is for Christian women who are still stuck in their abusive relationships, is actually funded by members of the community? A portion of every member's tuition goes towards supporting these podcasts. And so I've had people that have emailed me and said, how can I financially support the podcast? And I'm just like, join the program, because that's how you can support the podcast. You could join as a member and support the podcast and get all of this stuff and dip your feet in, or come into the forum and help other women who maybe aren't as further along as you are. Those are ways that you can give back as well and also get something out of it for yourself too. All right, you guys, that's all I have for you. Thank you so much, ladies, for those of you who came and participated and joined us here. I'm going to put links to all of their work. So if you're looking for what they have to offer, you can go to their websites and see what's going on over there. These are all women that I have known for many years. I trust them. I love them. They are my friends. And I highly, highly recommend them to you. These are mature, adult, badass women, and they can help you. All right. Until next time, keep flying higher.